Every story has a beginning and an end. The story part is merely a sequence of events that occurs before a conclusion. In our story, there are some rules that need to be understood for this to make perfect sense. In this first episode, time is our only rule. This will change in further episodes. Our story starts in 1939. The world is at war. The Allies and the Axis forces are raining hell on one another, and the midst of war covers some rather unsavory happenings occurring in the dark corners of Europe. Our eyes drawn to the Nazi Party. Huge steps are being taken to provide Germany with the momentum and force that it needs to win a war of such magnitude. Research into weapons, transport, and defense is awarded the highest of priorities. Germany was alive with the taste of industry. Tanks, aircraft, bullets, and firearms were in serious production. Underneath the advertised ideals of Nazi weaponization lies a deep secret embedded within a single group of like-minded individuals. This group of individuals was named Group 935. Group 935 consisted of many hierarchies. At the head of research was a Dr. Ludwig Maxis. Ludwig was the head scientist at Breslau, a small town on the western border of Germany. It is here that advanced weapons research was advocated. However, as we are about to learn, this wasn't the only research performed at the aptly named Giant Base. The most unusual researchers and developers to enter Group 935 were those of American extraction, namely Dr. McCain, Dr. Yena, Dr. Winter, and Dr. Lawton. Their presence within the ranks of 935 was difficult to process for Dr. Maxis. He, like many others at the time, believed in a pure race, and the idea of allied researchers was not an ideal he would rather comprehend. Dr. Maxis was no fool. He undertook every precaution possible to ensure that the research in the Giants never entered the outside world. Dr. Maxis' assistant, a Dr. Edward Richtofen, had other plans. Edward believed that the weapons research was altogether pointless. Unknown to Dr. Maxis, Edward was researching an altogether different method of advancing their country's mobilization. Edward, with the aid of two other doctors, a Dr. Groff and a Dr. Schutzer, was researching advanced matter transportation, more specifically, the rules under which the aforementioned travel would conform. By the end of the 1930s, Group 935's MPD project was alive. Dr. Maxis' hand-built frill machine in the Giant was in testing, and Edward's Wunderwaffe TG2 was ready to be presented to Army officials. Under the auspices of Dr. Maxis, of course. It was dawning on Maxis that his time in the Giant was about to end. They had been informed that the dead were walking, and the dead were about to invade Breslau. However, By the end of the 1930s, Edward's research was well into its final stages, and with the aid of Groff and Schutzer, he was able to test his teleporter device for the first time. Edward placed a single walnut into his prototype, and upon activation, the walnut successfully transported to the receiving bay. It was at this moment that Edward knew his design would change the courses of history for good. Days later, Edward presented his prototype and theory to Maxis. To his surprise, Maxis rejected his research, saying only that the Nazi Party were more interested in weaponizing their military than placing their trust in what could only be described as a dangerous fallacy. Edward was disappointed. However, he believed that Maxis would steal his technology and approach the Reichstag of his own accord. Here begins an invidious tale of treachery, murder, and revenge. Despite Maxis's orders, Edward and Dr. Schutzer decided to continue with their matter transference research. When the day finally arrived to test the device with a human subject, Edward stepped into the fray. The teleporter charged and blasted Edward through both space and time. When Edward landed, he was entrapped within a circular cavern. In the center stood an ancient artifact. The artifact was of a hollow pyramid structure, which was charged with a low voltage for protection. The device was littered with hieroglyphic carvings, also designed for protection of other sorts. It was at this point that Edward realized that he had stumbled across the item that Dr. Maxis had spent so many years developing himself. Seconds later, Edward was transported a second time. When he landed, he was amongst an angry crowd, all of them pushing past him, running towards a temple deep within the dark jungle. He had traveled to a place long forgotten, before time as we know it. His eyes laid witness to an extinction, an ancient civilization, housed deep within the confines of a tight-knit maze of tunnels. In honor of the protection he offered them, they praised him as a god. Every egotist's dream. It wasn't long till Edward journeyed back to the giant. However, to Dr. Schutzer, it seemed only a matter of days. In the time that Edward was missing, he had found enough items to one day conclude his grand scheme. He knew, however, that if he was to return, he would need a platoon. He understood that all would not survive for long. In Germany, Dr. Schutzer had almost given up hope. However, upon Edward's return, he was overjoyed. Edward, however, had no time for celebration. He knew now that Maxis's deliberation and inability to trust his subordinates would eventually lead to his demise. He knew it was time to remove Dr. Maxis from the equation. Edward presented his findings to a committee of Group 935 members. They praised his work and believed his ideas would truly extend the human condition. Edward felt it best to continue Dr. Maxis's research until he deemed it necessary to end his farcical endeavors. In early 1942, Dr. Maxis was testing his own breed of real teleportation. Maxis's research was now years behind that of Edward's. Edward needn't waste any more time. Upon Maxis's only successful test, he transformed his daughter's Alsatian into a demonically possessed beast. Samantha, Dr. Maxis's daughter, compromised the test and ran into the chamber. Devastated by the horrific images of her dog, Dr. Richtofen only stared. He need not help. He locked the doors and walked away. Unbeknownst to Richtofen, Maxis threw his daughter into the teleporter before entering the ether himself. Now that the horrors had reached the giant, Dr. Schutzer, Edward's loyal partner, took his own life. Here ends 1.